ready to turn left. Turn left. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. You have arrived at your destination. Your route guidance is now finished.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is John Tapp with the Volvo VNL on this Earth Day, because I can as I stay home from Club Challenge today. Uh, Beginning with LA, while the kitchen renovations are still underway. So waste paper, that's we're gonna start in Los Angeles, and where the movies are being made at. And I don't know if I'm gonna make it or not, to make some movies or not. So, keep the earth clean, uh, LA is where the wildfires were happening in there. So
Let's do this.
let's go for a ride to keep this planet clean, everyone.
Turn left. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. left, and then turn left. Turn left. Right, and then continue straight on. Go straight on. Please mind the speed limit. Go straight on. Go straight on.
This programming is sponsored by HealthLink Advisors, helping hospitals safeguard patient care and operations against cyber attacks with documented continuity solutions. Details at healthlinkadvisors.com.
Full-time diploma program for remote, asynchronous learners throughout Texas. More at highschool.utexas.edu/tuition-free.
The warnings have been out there. Many parts of Texas will run out of water if no action is taken soon. But as populations rise and cities scramble to find new water sources, Laredo and Webb County are currently working on a plan to tap a new aquifer. But the water won't come cheap. What this may portend for the future and more on the next Texas Standard.
This is morning at 10. After that, hello Houston at 11:83 for the high. 30% chance of some showers after lunch. You could see some on your drive home. 71 for the low. 73 right now, 8:34.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Ooma, a cloud-based phone service for any size business with an automated virtual receptionist, video meetings, and other features to connect to customers and coworkers anywhere at ooma.com/NPR. From Indeed, committed to giving job listings increased visibility with relevant candidates through its sponsored jobs feature. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Layla Falden. Good morning. Harvard is suing the Trump administration to stop it from taking away billions of dollars in research funding. Kirk Carapezza at member station GBH in Boston has been following this lawsuit and the broader White House crackdown against higher education, and he's with us now. Good morning, Kirk.
Hey, good morning.
So we know the Trump administration has been making demands of top universities, threatening their funding if they don't comply, and now Harvard's suing. Could you just put this suit into context for us?
Sure. This is the latest clash in what's really a broader culture war. The Trump administration is pressuring elite schools like Harvard and Columbia, calling for reform, slashing overhead costs, trying to tie their federal funding to hiring, admissions, and viewpoint diversity. And earlier this month, the administration demanded Harvard audit campus ideology and stop recognizing certain student groups accused of anti-Semitism. Harvard President Alan Garber, who was Jewish, refused. He called the demands illegal and unconstitutional. In response, the government froze more than $2 billion in grants, threatened to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status, and to limit its ability to enroll international students.
And now Harvard is suing. What is their legal argument?
So Harvard says the funding freeze is retaliatory and baseless. Its lawsuit argues there's no rational link between real anti-Semitism concerns on campus and life-saving research funding. In a message addressed to the Harvard community, President Garber said the government's actions will be, quote, severe and long-lasting. At this time, the White House has not responded to our request for comment.
And how is the campus reacting to Harvard suing?
Students and faculty are celebrating this decision. Government professor Ryan Enos says Harvard is uniquely positioned to challenge what he and many others see as Trump's authoritarian playbook.
What it takes is somebody that is willing to put the resources and the time, and Harvard has those things. And I think so many of us are proud that they're actually doing it.
Alumni are proud too and willing to support the fight financially. One alum who fears being targeted told me if Harvard can't use its $50 billion endowment to fend off these threats, then what is it good for? It's also worth pointing out that one of the reasons that Columbia, facing similar demands, did not sue last month was because its leaders feared the cost wasn't worth it in the long run.
Now, Kirk, you cover higher education. What does this fight say about academia right now?
Yeah, President Trump has long painted schools like Harvard as too elitist, too expensive, and too quote-unquote woke. You know, he campaigned on that message, and surveys show many Americans agree with him. A recent Gallup survey found that while Americans broadly value college, the confidence gap is growing fast. A decade ago, only about 10% of Americans said they had no confidence in higher ed. Today, that number is closer to a third.
So why is public trust so low?
Yeah, Americans are worried about colleges pushing political agendas, not teaching relevant skills, and of course, the cost. So higher ed is facing these existential threats from every angle. Lynn Pasquarella is the president of the American Association of Colleges and Universities, and she told me most schools can't afford to take on the government, but none of them can afford to remain silent given the circumstances.
Everyone needs to exercise moral courage at this time and defend not only higher education and its democratic purposes, but the values that we hold dear collectively in our society.
And just this morning, for the first time, her group and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences issued a joint statement with nearly 200 presidents signing on, condemning the administration's actions.
That is GBH's Kirk Carapezza. Thank you for your reporting, Kirk.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Many people around the world feel a personal connection to Pope Francis, and that includes people in the Middle East. He traveled to Iraq. He traveled to Persian Gulf nations. And there's one place where the Pope maintained a special connection even when he was deathly ill. NPR's producer in Gaza, Anas Baba, and Jane Araf prepared this report.
Yusuf. Buonasera, Santo Padre. Buonasera, come stai?
This is Pope Francis in a WhatsApp call in January to the Holy Family Church in Gaza City.
Cosa avete mangiato oggi?
He's speaking to Father Yusuf Assad, a priest there. He asks what he ate. The call was during a lull in fighting between Israel and Hamas, and things were better. 3 months later, the ceasefire is broken, and famine is setting in. But on that day, the congregation had chicken wings. Francis ends by saying they would talk tomorrow. 300 people have sheltered inside the last remaining Catholic church in Gaza since the war began.
Go straight on.
The Pope, head of 1.4 billion Catholics around the world, called every evening to see how they were. The last time was Saturday, 2 days before he died, says George Anton, a Holy Family parish spokesman. Anton says Francis asked them to pray for him and to not be afraid, that he was with them. Outside the church, a group of children play soccer. Inside, Anton tells producer Anas Baba, there's a huge feeling of loss. Today, we feel like we're truly orphans, Anton tells him. He says no matter where he was or what he was doing, Francis would call every evening at 7. He would ask whether we had food, did we have clean water, had anyone been injured. It was the questions a father would ask, Anton says. We lost all of this. But that's not all they lost with the death of Pope Francis. The Gaza war has raged for a year and a half. At least 1,600 Israelis have been killed. The Israeli response has killed more than 51,000 Palestinians and destroyed the Palestinian enclave. The war rarely makes headlines anymore. But Pope Francis never let it drop.
E in modo particolare alla comunità cristiana di Gaza.
The day before he died, he brought up Gaza in his Easter address at the Vatican, read by his deputy. He called for a lasting ceasefire.
Go straight on.
He was the only voice that did not go silent, says Anton in Gaza. There are fewer than 700 Christians left in Gaza, a region that was home to the beginning of Christianity. Anton says Pope Francis was concerned with all Palestinians. Producer Bob asks him if there's anything he'd like to say in English. Anton says Pope Francis believed Gazans deserve dignity and independence.
I would call the whole world and every individual on this earth to see Gaza by the eyes of Pope Francis.
A pope who forged a personal and lasting connection with a tiny community in the midst of war.
Please mind the speed.
With producer Anis Baba in Gaza, I'm Jane Araf, NPR News, Amman.
It's News 88.7.
What you hear on this station, every report, every interview, every update, is only here because someone like you gave.
80% of Houston Public Media's funding comes from Houstonians like you. Our newsroom gets support from you, our community.
You have the right to know what's going on, and you have the power to make sure others do too.
Join the community right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Downtown Houston Plus, with new businesses like Tenfold Coffee Company, Meow Wolf, Barbacana, Punchline Comedy Club, and Bubble Boba. Details at downtownhouston.org.
From UT Austin's McCombs School of Business, offering a weekend MBA in Houston. Classes held in person on alternating weekends. Campus visit April 25th and 26th. Registration is available. TexasMBA.com. Make it here. Cloudy today, a 30% chance of some showers. This afternoon, 83 for the high. Some sun could come through. 73 right now. News 88.
Good morning, I'm Jonathan Fruin at the BBC. The Vatican says Pope Francis's funeral will be held on Saturday. Official footage has been released showing his open coffin at the chapel of his residence. The BBC's Mark Lowen is in Rome.
Wednesday morning, the Pope's coffin will be moved to St. Peter's Basilica, where it will be lying until Saturday, when the funeral is planned for 10 a.m. local time.
Elsewhere, the World Food Programme says it'll suspend vital aid to nearly 4 million vulnerable Ethiopians in May. The total includes around 650,000 malnourished women and children. Kalkadanya Beltal is in Addis Ababa.
More than 10 million Ethiopians are currently facing hunger or malnutrition, with humanitarian needs outpacing available resources. These include 3 million internally displaced people forced from their homes due to multiple conflicts across the country. WFP said the level of malnutrition had become alarmingly high.
And Chinese state media say prosecutors have ordered the arrest of a former anti-corruption official on suspicion of taking bribes. President Xi Jinping warned in January that corruption still pervaded the ruling Communist Party and was increasing. Here's Stephen McDonnell.
Li Gang had been head of the corruption investigation team within the powerful organisation department. Now he too has been purged. The former investigator is said to have committed serious violations of Communist Party discipline and the law.
I'm Jonathan Fruin at the BBC in London.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from the Kauffman Foundation, providing access to opportunities that help people achieve financial stability, upward mobility, and economic prosperity, regardless of race, gender, or geography. Kauffman.org. From the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org. And from the listeners who support this NPR station.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Leila Fadel.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. More than 40% of women have dense breast tissue, which puts them at higher risk for developing cancer and for cancer to be missed on mammograms. Testing can reveal this issue, but many aren't sure what to do with the diagnosis. Here's NPR's Yuki Noguchi.
A Pittsburgh woman named Joy remembers her own mother diligently getting her cancer screenings.
She had her mammograms every year
But, like Joy, her mother had dense clusters of glands and tissue in her breasts. That likely obscured the tumors on her 2D black and white mammograms until it was too late.
She was diagnosed at age 43, and by 48 she was gone.
So when Joy herself turned 43, she enrolled in a breast imaging study. Her mammograms found nothing, but researchers followed up with high-contrast images and told her,
"We think we see something."
Joy did have cancer, but it was caught early enough to remove it completely. Joy didn't want to share her full name because she hasn't discussed her diagnosis widely with colleagues, but she wanted to share her story to advocate for easier access to follow-up MRIs for women with dense breasts.
I think it should be more automatic.
Getting follow-up images is usually not easy. MRI machines are in short supply, and out-of-pocket costs for an MRI can cost as much as $1,000, says Krissa Smith, Vice President of Education at the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation.
Costs is the biggest barrier, and most of the supplemental imaging is not covered by insurance.
Smith says family history, weight, and lifestyle can factor into one's risk, so it's best to talk to a doctor.
It really has to be a conversation with your doctor, because if you have other risk factors, a family history of breast cancer, that's going to be a more targeted conversation for you and what you need.
Dr. Wendy Berg did that a decade ago.
When I had put in my own risk factors into the risk models and determined that I, in fact, was high risk, and I knew I had dense breasts, I contacted my doctor and I said I would like to get a screen MRI. And he said, "Well, remind me why you want to do that?"
Berg researches radiology and breast imaging at the University of Pittsburgh. One of the biggest problems, she says, is many doctors themselves are not familiar with the latest science. According to Berg's own findings, mammograms can detect, on average, 5 cancers in 1,000 patient scans. Ultrasounds can catch 1 or 2 more.
We added a screening MRI and found another 15 cancers per 1,000, even after the mammogram and ultrasound.
Yet, because of cost, complexity, or lack of awareness, Berg says fewer than 1/10 of eligible patients get follow-up MRIs. Berg is also Chief Scientific Officer of DenseBreastInfo.org, an educational website. She says she benefited from her own advice with the MRI she pushed her doctor for 10 years ago.
As luck would have it, that MRI showed a small invasive cancer that is not visible and is not visible in retrospect on my mammogram.
Berg says women need to push their doctors and insurance companies.
It remains incumbent on the woman herself to look at her risk factors, to talk to her doctor and say, "Hey, I'd like to get an MRI." Don't wait for them to recommend it to you.
For the many women with dense breasts, it could be a lifesaver. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
.49, it's News 88.7. Good morning. Freeways cleaning up nicely. Some earlier wrecks. The one on the Southwest Freeway and about at the Loop, that's gone. Continuing north on 69, Collingsworth, they cleaned up another one. Just a 30% chance of some showers, mainly after lunch. Could affect your drive home. 83 for the high, 71 for the low tonight, 81 for the high Wednesday. 50% chance of some showers and slight chance of rain Thursday going into Friday, but then sunshine, mid-80s for Saturday. We're 73 degrees right now. Just about 10 minutes away from Houston Matters. Craig Cohen is here. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's about 50 degrees in here, so I'm awake now.
Well, it's like I say, this is how we keep the radio fresh.
Yes, I'm fresh for sure. What's going on?
Coming up on Houston Matters this morning, we're going to begin with some oral arguments heard yesterday at the Supreme Court that's involving a case from Texas. The main plaintiff is from Texas. It's challenging a provision of the Affordable Care Act on religious grounds. Essentially, there's a provision within the act that says there are certain drugs that they are deemed by this panel to be preventive, and they put them in this one category. Then health insurance companies have to pay for them. But there's been a challenge to that from those who say, well, we don't want our group health insurance to pay for this drug or this drug because we think there's a moral implication there. So that's what the High Court is considering. We'll learn more about that. We're also going to tell you about efforts to address higher than the Texas average rates of sexually transmitted diseases in the Houston area. It's also Earth Day, and we will hear from Rice University historian Douglas Brinkley about the great environmental awakening of the 1960s and 70s that led to the EPA, the Clean Water Act, and Clean Air Act, and a lot of other stuff. And we'll also hear from rocker David Ramirez, who's performing in town tomorrow night. Houston Matters in 9 minutes. Stick around.
A lot of people are buying electric cars used.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Gamma. Gamma uses AI to generate presentations, websites, social media, and documents from a single prompt. More at gamma.app.
I'm David Brancaccio in Los Angeles. Later today, electric vehicle maker Tesla is set to report sales and profits for the first 3 months of this year. Tesla's stock is down 44% year so far, so the prognosis for today is not good. Part of this is concern about CEO Elon Musk's role in the Trump administration, and part of it is Tesla's competitors running past them. But the EV market is also used. In fact, sales of used EVs are up 39% in a year, according to Cox Automotive. Marketplace's Henry Epps been spending time at an EV dealership in New England.
Jesse Lohr tries to keep his prices relatively low. Most of the vehicles at his dealership, Greenwave Electric Vehicles in Northampton, New Hampshire, are under $40,000, and many are a good bit less.
So now we get to this section, and this is almost entirely under $25,000 cars, right? You'll notice a lot of Kia Niros, Tesla Model 3s, Chevy Bolts, more Chevy Bolts.
Like a lot of car dealers, he doesn't have the cash to buy all of this inventory. He uses lines of credit with local banks, and their relatively high interest rates mean every one of the cars on his lot cost him money every day.
Just sitting on our lot today, we say these cars eat hay at a rate of anywhere between $8 and $12 per day.
So it's in Lohr's interest to turn over his inventory pretty quickly. After a rough first year in 2023, sales picked up, thanks in part to a federal tax credit for used EVs that a buyer can receive up front. Then last October, he says, business slowed way down.
Exit right.
And then on November 6th, the day after the election, it was almost like somebody had flipped a switch. We all of a sudden got really busy with so many people saying, I want to get my EV before the tax credit goes away.
That only lasted through Inauguration Day, even though the tax credit is still available. In the last few weeks, business has picked back up again.
We have definitely heard from people that they're afraid of tariffs increasing the prices on new as well as used vehicles. And they're not wrong. It is already happening at the wholesale level, which will come down to the retail level as well.
With the exception of one brand, Tesla. Jesse Lohr's dad, Mark, buys much of the dealership's inventory at online wholesale auctions.
Right now, I have to tell you that if I look at 100 cars today, 65 to 70 of them are Teslas.
He says the flood started after CEO Elon Musk became a major force in the Trump administration.
As of January, we stopped buying all Teslas at the auction because then we started getting, 3 to 5 calls a day of people saying, how much will you give me for my 2021 Tesla?
They've bought some of them at low prices, Mark Lohr says, and they've managed to resell a few. Dmitry Dragula bought a used Model Y from Greenwave a year ago.
The only reason I got the Tesla is because they have the network for the chargers.
He says his choice has nothing to do with Elon Musk.
I just like the car. I don't really like it, I'm like, ugh.
But if he changes his mind, there is a used EV dealership nearby that might buy it back from him. In Northampton, New Hampshire, I'm Henry Apt for Marketplace.
The biggest maker of EV batteries in the world, CATL of China, is talking about its new sodium-ion tech. Cheaper, works better in cold. 300 miles on a 5-minute charge are among the claims. Also, sodium is not rare, like the usual lithium. After the Dow fell more than 970 points yesterday, the Dow is up 506 points, 1.3%. The S&P is up 1.4% this morning. The NASDAQ 1.7% up. Bonds are up, allowing the 10-year interest rate to ease slightly to 4.37%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, committed to business buying solutions to empower leaders to streamline and focus on growth. Learn more about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com.
With Americans having fewer kids, there are fewer going to school, hitting budgets of public schools in states that pay schools by the kid. In Orange County, California, a public school system is responding by doing something colleges do to attract customers. From our public media sibling LAist, Jill Replicable reports.
A standard feature of California schools is the MPR, or multi-purpose room, which is about as drab as it sounds. A big open space where you can stage a play or a science fair. But the MPR on this campus in Yorba Linda was converted last fall into a high-tech gym. On one side, coaches work on wrestling moves with 3 young kids. On the other, brand new training equipment lines the walls.
This machine alone does hundreds of exercises.
Christian Holiday is a supervisor at the Institute.
All that data gets pushed up into the cloud so we can measure metrics for each kid.
Next door is the Recovery Center. It's got plush recliners equipped with red light therapy. In one of the chairs, a high school wrestler kicks back with compression boots on his legs. The students in this program are homeschooled and then come here to the Universal Sports Institute to work with professional trainers. Some parents say the Institute gives them more family time because their sports-crazy kids aren't training during dinner. Heather Sargent has 2 boys enrolled.
As a former athlete myself, would have absolutely died for an opportunity like this.
To be clear, this is a free public school program, part of the Placentia Yorba Linda Unified School District. Superintendent Alex Chernus developed the program.
Like many districts in California, we've been struggling with enrollment.
That could just be a demographic reality, but Chernus thinks at least some of those kids are going to private or charter schools.
So I got to thinking, well, maybe this is a way to keep our kids, but also maybe to attract kids from all over.
Including from outside the district. More students would mean more state funding at a time when districts are being forced into tough choices about closing schools and cutting staff. Currently, there are only about 100 kids enrolled at the Sports Institute. District staff estimate the program will be about $1 million in the hole this year. And some school board members aren't sure this elite program is a good investment. The board is now planning cuts across the district to close its multi-million-dollar budget gap. The Sports Institute has already started to trim its budget. It hopes to double its student body next year, which could make the whole venture more sustainable. In Yorba Linda, California, I'm Jill Replogle for Marketplace.
And you're listening to the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
8:59, it's News 88.7. Good morning. Reports of a new wreck headed out on 10 Katy Freeway around Patterson Road near TC Gesture. I can see some delays in that area. There could be something there. Weather sponsored by Stewart PC Attorneys for Executives.com. Low 80s for the high, maybe some sun, definitely clouds, slight chance of rain this afternoon. 71 for the low tonight, 81 for the high. For tomorrow, 50% chances, some showers, 72 spring, 73 here at the University of Houston.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Specs. 63 years of large selection. Now that's worth toasting to. Offering anniversary selections all month long. Details at specsonline.com. The fun starts here.
Streaming live online, check out HoustonPublicMedia.org. Download our app as well. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. A service of the University of Houston. Houston Matters starts right now, 9 o'clock.
The U.S. Supreme Court Monday heard arguments in a Texas case challenging a provision of the Affordable Care Act on religious grounds. I'm Craig Cohen. Today on Houston Matters, why some businesses don't want their health plans paying for certain preventive drugs.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also this hour, efforts to address higher than the Texas average rates of sexually transmitted diseases in the Houston area. Then, on this Earth Day, Rice University historian Douglas Brinkley discusses the great environmental awakening of the 1960s and 70s. And Americana folk rocker David Ramirez on why he stopped writing music, then started again. He's on stage at the Heights Theater Wednesday night. We'll start with the news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The Vatican says Pope Francis's funeral will be this Saturday. In his final Easter address, the pontiff called the situation in Gaza dramatic and deplorable after a year and a half of war. NPR's Anas Baba reports the Pope was a constant source of comfort to Gaza's Christians.
Up until his last moments, Pope Francis reached out and spoke up for Palestinians in Gaza. George Anton is a leader at the Holy Family Church, Gaza's only Catholic church. He said that the Pope called the congregation every evening, blessing them over speakerphone, asking if they had enough food or if they were safe in the church where they are sheltering from Israeli bombing. Anton said the last call was made the day before he died.
انتوا كيف حالكم؟ أنا بصلي لكم وانتوا صلوا لي. أنا محتاج صلاتكم.
How are you? Anton said the Pope asked. I'm praying for you. Pray for me. I need your prayers. Anton said we feel orphaned now. The Pope was a shield for Christians in Gaza. Today he said less than 600 Christians remain in Gaza. Anas Baba, NPR News, Gaza City.
NPR has learned that the White House may be looking for a new defense secretary. That's after Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth used the messaging app Signal to share sensitive information about U.S. military strikes on Yemen, this time with his family. This is the second time Hegseth used the Signal chat to do this, and it was on a personal cell phone. Hegseth denies that any of the shared information was classified.
What was shared over Signal, then and now, however you characterize it, was informal, unclassified coordinations for media coordination and other things. That's what I've said from the beginning. At the beginning, it was left-wing reporters from The Atlantic who got a hold of it and then wanted to create a problem for the president. This is what it's all about, trying to get at President Trump and his agenda.
He spoke to Fox News. A note, NPR's CEO, Catherine Marr, is the chair of the board of the Signal Foundation, which supports the messaging app. Stocks opened higher this morning, regaining some of the ground lost in yesterday's sell-off. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped nearly 600 points in early trading.
The partial rebound in the stock market comes amid new warnings of economic fallout from President Trump's trade war. The International Monetary Fund predicts the combination of Trump's tariffs and economic uncertainty will cut into global growth this year. The IMF has downgraded its growth forecast for the United States by nearly a full percentage point. Economists say the trade war will lead to lower productivity and higher prices in the U.S. Trump wants the Federal Reserve to cushion the slowdown by lowering interest rates, but so far the central bank's been cautious for fear of rekindling inflation. Trump's attacks on Fed Chairman Jerome Powell have rattled financial markets, contributing to Monday's sharp drop in the stock market. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Cy Sims Foundation. Since 1985, supporting advances in science, education, and the arts towards a fairer, more just, and civil society. More information is available at cysimsfoundation.org.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Harrop. A Harris County deputy is being hailed as a hero today after potentially saving the lives of many yesterday in downtown Houston. Deputy Sheila Jones quickly approached a man who was carrying 2 guns just outside of the family courthouse downtown. During the pursuit, there was an exchange of gunfire, and both the suspect and Deputy Jones got hit. Francisco Tijero was at the courthouse for jury duty and explains what he heard.
The gunfire was just intense gunfire.
Like how? Like pow or just more?
No, I'm talking I'm talking like New Year's in my neighborhood, and I live in a Hispanic neighborhood, so do the math.
Deputy Jones was shot in the back and transported to Memorial Hermann Hospital. She did not suffer any internal injuries, likely because of the bulletproof vest that she was wearing. District Attorney Sean Tier called her a hero. The gunman was stable but needed several surgeries. He's being charged with 2 possession of firearm felonies and is facing life in prison. Houston Mayor John Whitmire joined the debate on bond eligibility for alleged violent offenders this month. He says the state constitution should be changed to allow alleged murderers to be held without bond. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports he made an exaggerated claim during those comments.
Whitmire threw out a startling statistic during a city council meeting earlier this month.
There are like 900 people charged with murder or capital murder on the streets of Houston today, out on bond or they're fugitives.
According to the Harris County District Clerk's database, the actual number is 450. The exaggeration fits into an often hyperbolic debate about bond for alleged violent offenders in Harris County. Critics often point to cases where judges allow defendants out on bond, even when prosecutors don't fight back against the decisions. Voters could soon strengthen judicial discretion to hold alleged violent offenders without bond. If the legislature passes Senate Joint Resolution 5, a constitutional amendment will appear on the ballot this November. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
And authorities in Jamaica Beach say there may be more packages of cocaine that wash up on shore in the coming days and weeks. They're asking the public to hand them in should they discover them. One wrapped bundle of the stimulant was found on the West End beach on Easter Sunday. Authorities say this is likely the result of a drug bust at sea. I'm Matt Harem, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Good morning. Coming up this hour, efforts to address higher than the Texas average rates of sexually transmitted infections in Houston. Also on this Earth Day, area historian Douglas Brinkley discusses the great environmental awakening of the 60s and 70s. And we chat with Americana folk rocker David Ramirez ahead of his concert tomorrow night at the Heights Theater. First, though, on Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments in a case from here in Texas challenging a provision of the Affordable Care Act on religious grounds. The law requires medication deemed as preventive care to be covered by insurance and group health plans, but a lawsuit argues it shouldn't be extended, as it is now, to PrEP, the HIV prevention drug. Seth Chandler is a professor of law at the UH Law Center who specializes in constitutional and health law. Seth, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's start with a little background here. The Affordable Care Act has this requirement for health insurers to cover, quote, preventive health services, but doesn't specify what those services are. So how is that determined?
A group called the United States Preventative Task Force makes a decision as to whether treatment should be put in what's called Class A or Class B, meaning that health insurers and group health plans must not only cover it, but can't charge insureds for it. It has to be free to them.
And who makes up the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force?
Yes, well, that's the rub. It's a bunch of, quote, volunteers who historically have been appointed by the head of something called the Agency for Health Care Quality and Research, but they haven't gone through any sort of Senate confirmation process. And that's where this Supreme Court case comes in.
And that task force identified, among other things, PrEP, the HIV prevention drug, as preventive care.
That's right, and that's what's catalyzed the immediate dispute. But actually the dispute is much bigger because what the plaintiffs are saying is that not only should the task force not have approved PrEP, they're nobody, and therefore they shouldn't have approved anything like mammograms or high blood pressure treatment or any of the 80 other things that the USPTF has approved over the past 10, 15 years.
But why are they focusing on PrEP?
Well, they're focusing on it because they have religious objections to the use of that drug, which they say because it prevents HIV actually catalyzes immoral sexual behavior in their view.
Yeah, they argue the coverage, this is the quote here, encourages homosexual behavior, intravenous drug use, and sexual activity outside of marriage between one man and one woman. And so, again, they're making that case, though, on religious grounds.
That's right, although that's not the issue that was argued before the Supreme Court yesterday. The issue before the Supreme Court yesterday was simply a separation of powers issue as to who the heck are these USPTF people. They haven't been appointed in the proper way, according to the plaintiffs.
And what have lower courts said about that?
Well, the Fifth Circuit, which governs Texas, agreed with the plaintiffs and said that these were basically principal officers of the United States because they had the power to make binding decisions, and therefore they needed to go through the usual Senate confirmation process.
And U.S. District Judge also ruled in favor of the plaintiffs prior to that?
I believe so.
The Biden administration asked the Supreme Court to weigh in on this last year. The High Court only agreed to hear it this January. How is the Trump administration approaching this case?
Well, for once, they sort of agree with the Biden administration. They're trying to rescue this provision of the Affordable Care Act, perhaps so that President Trump can have authority to pick who is going to be on that USPTF and pick people that he prefers. So they, instead of challenging the Affordable Care Act, which they've done on most occasions, are in this instance actually sort of going along with it, but only, I think, in order so that they can get control over what treatments are recommended or not.
And is that something that the High Court can require or order?
Yes, they could say, they could grant the plaintiffs relief and say that...
Okay. Let's find a new route.
The whole thing is illegitimate. You've sort of got to start from scratch, which will create chaos. Or they can interpret the statute as the U.S. government wants them to say that, well, no, actually, if you read the statute very carefully, you can interpret it to mean that the president or the secretary of HHS, Robert F. Kennedy, gets to appoint these people, gets to fire them. Their choices are only recommendations, and that's sort of what the Trump administration is hoping to do, is to salvage the statute through a process of statutory interpretation.
Is there anybody among the Supreme Court justices, based off of what they said in oral arguments yesterday, making the case for this law is fine as is?
That argument isn't... It depends what you mean by as is. I think many of the justices showed sympathy for the U.S.'s position that let's see if we can figure out a way to interpret this law so that it is constitutional. And that may very well be how the court comes out, that with a little bit of coaxing and twisting, you can get the law to be constitutional. But what that will mean is that President Trump or subsequent presidents have the authority to pick the members of the USPTF and that their recommendations aren't really all that binding.
You said that if this provision gets tossed entirely, that it would sow chaos.
Absolutely.
In what form?
Because it means that nothing that the USPTF has done over the past dozen years will have been appropriate. It will be as if it were done by some rogue party. And what that means is that things like mammograms, things like high blood pressure treatment, things like PrEP drugs, insurers are no longer obligated after their contracts run out to cover those for free.
Right.
And that will, I think, create some degree of chaos in the insurance markets. It will mean that some people are priced out of these drugs. PrEP treatment is not cheap. And it's going to require a whole renegotiation of the arrangements between employers or other people who pay for insurance and the insurance companies.
Could we ultimately see insurers suing for relief and saying, well, then all these drugs that we did pay for over the last 12 years, we want our money back?
Possibly. That's an interesting idea. We'd have to talk about whether the ruling applies retroactively. The other possibility is that Congress, in theory, could fix the problem. They could write a statute that is constitutional. The challenge there is, Congress literally cannot agree on the time of day. And so it's not clear whether Congress would be able to fix the problem if the Supreme Court were to hold the statute unconstitutional.
We're about to talk about how the Houston area is seeing a higher than the Texas average amount of sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV. And I guess I'm wondering if this provision is allowed to remain, but there's some delay in the implementation of some new panel, or if they toss this entirely, this provision. What would that mean in terms of healthcare costs, not just for those that are seeking out drugs that might be considered preventive care that would have been covered by insurers entirely, but also for the rest of us? Do you see the connection there?
It's very tricky. I think for people who need PrEP drugs, a ruling throwing out this statute will likely increase the cost of those drugs because the insurer will no longer be obligated to provide them for free. On the other hand, if insurers are not required to provide a lot of treatments for free, in a competitive market, what that will mean is that premiums go down because some of the burden will be shifted to the individuals who need it. So I think the economics of what happens following a Supreme Court ruling are actually quite tricky. What isn't tricky is to realize that it is going to sow, at least I think for a year or two, real chaos in the insurance markets.
When should we expect a high court decision?
Probably by the end of June. They've got a lot on their plate, so we don't know for sure, but I would not expect an immediate decision on this one.
Seth Chandler is a professor of law at the University of Houston Law Center, where he specializes in constitutional and health law. Seth, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, regardless of the fate of this one case before the Supreme Court, the Houston area is already seeing higher than the Texas average of sexually transmitted infections. We'll discuss what steps are being taken to address that as Houston Matters continues.
Turn right.
Access to information is your right, not a privilege, and it isn't something you should take for granted. Reliable, vetted reporting matters, especially now.
Houston Public Media keeps you connected to what's happening in Greater Houston, the country, and around the world. But we rely on your support to make it possible.
This is your chance to stand up for the kind of journalism that protects your right to be informed.
Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Baylor College of Medicine. At the heart of the Texas Medical Center, Baylor physicians and scientists continue to shape healthcare for Houston and beyond through education, research, and innovation.
And I get support from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details 730-2525 or johnmooreservices.com.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. While the U.S. Supreme Court wrestles with whether or not health insurance should be required to cover a drug like PrEP designed to prevent the spread of HIV, that and other sexually transmitted diseases are already spreading in the Houston area faster than they are on average across the entire state of Texas. According to the Harris County Public Health Department, HIV is spreading at nearly twice the rate in Harris County that it is in Texas overall. Dr. Erica Brown is the local health authority and director of the Community Health and Wellness Division at Harris County Public Health. She joins us now. Dr. Brown, good morning.
Good morning.
What more can you tell us about Harris County's sexually transmitted infections and specifically HIV rates and how they compare with all of Texas?
Yes, thank you for having me. HIV cases remain a significant public health concern in Harris County, with the increase in diagnoses greatest among those aged 25 to 34. However, unfortunately, we're also seeing increases in the rates of chlamydia, especially among individuals aged 15 to 24, and with gonorrhea also in our younger population as well. Syphilis rates as well increased, and alarmingly so in congenital syphilis, where syphilis is passed on from the mother to the baby. Increases were also observed there with a 291% rise since 2017.
And this is comparing data from 2017 to 2022, is that correct?
And then turn left.
So in the comprehensive study, the data is compared from 2015 through 2022. Some of the data based on the Texas Department of State Health Services, CDC, and the U.S. Census Bureau ranges from 2016 to 2022 and some from 2017 to 2022.
And 2022 is the most recent data that we have, is that correct?
It is.
Is this spread consistent across Harris County, or does it vary from one part of the county to another?
Unfortunately, it is not consistent across the county. There are some zip codes that have higher rates of HIV transmission and or new diagnosis. Some areas that have higher rates of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. Some of the reasons for that, however, may be where the diagnosis has been made, if the address of the infected individual is not complete. Sometimes the address of where the diagnosis is made is used.
You mentioned rises among younger adults. Are we seeing any other demographic groups in which the spread of sexually transmitted diseases is higher?
We are. So among people who are living with HIV, those in their 45 to 54-year-old and 55 to 64-year-old age groups have the highest case rate. Again, for those who are newly diagnosed with HIV, those who are 25 to 34 years old have the highest case rates. Chlamydia, ages 25 to 34 age groups have the highest rates as well. In terms of the demographics and locations, with some of the zip codes for the top rates, specifically around HIV, are in the downtown area, Montrose area, and Kashmir Gardens area. But again, some of that can be attributed specifically to where the diagnosis is made, not necessarily that there is a higher rate of infection in those areas.
Is it clear why we do have a higher rate of spread of HIV and some of these other diseases here than across the state overall?
So we don't have a clear answer as to why we have some of the higher rates. Of course, we do know that Texas has one of the highest uninsured rates in the country because we do not have Medicaid expansion, which supports easy access to health care. So that could be one of the reasons. Some of the other things that contribute as well, though, are other economic and social factors, such as housing instability and financial instability as well.
Is this a relatively new phenomenon, or has Harris County always had higher STI and specifically HIV rates than the rest of the state?
I'm not quite sure in terms of where we were years ago, but again, from 2015 and forward, we have been steadily rising and unfortunately seeing higher averages than the state of Texas and across the country. Aside from reporting these numbers, is there anything else that Harris County Public Health can and does do to try and help address this? There is. So Harris County Public Health provides free HIV and STI testing. We do home testing so that we can assist in removing some of the stigma. The key is to know your status. However, that you can access care for that is really the most important thing is to know your status with regard to sexually transmitted infections and HIV. And so we provide free testing around the county. We also provide treatment as well as for those who are diagnosed with HIV in particular. We do provide rapid start, which is start to antiretroviral therapy for the first 30 days before transitioning to a permanent medical home. We also provide care and treatment for all sexually transmitted infections, as well as condoms, which is the first line of prevention, is safe sex practice, as well as post-exposure prophylaxis for high-risk sexual activities, such as doxy-prep. Dr. Erica Brown is the local health authority and director of the Community Health and Wellness Division at Harris County Public Health. Dr. Brown, thank you very much. Thank you. And joining us now are Jill Johns, Director of Health Navigation, and Dr. Natalie Vanek, Medical Director for Infectious Disease, both with Legacy Community Health. Good morning to you both. Good morning. And as we continue our conversation, we welcome you to it with questions and comments at 713-440-8870 or talk@houstonmatters.org. Jill, what would you say is Legacy's biggest challenge in fighting HIV and other STIs in Houston right now?
Hi, a great question. So I think one of the largest challenges is awareness and stigma along with that. A lot of people don't realize that not only are HIV and STIs rising in our community, but they are still very much prevalent. And so making sure that people know that these infections do not target just one person or one type of sexual behavior is incredibly important. And then also making sure people know where they can get tested and where they can get treatment or care if needed.
Dr. Vanek, when should Houstonians get tested for sexually transmitted diseases?
That's also a great question. So people should start getting tested the minute that they begin having any form of sexual activity. So I'd like to remind our listeners that people can get STDs through oral sex as well as other forms of sex. So you were asking about the rates of STIs, and if you look at the statistics, of our most affected communities, particularly the young communities, can have sometimes 5 bouts of chlamydia within a year. So we would like to get our young people started for STI screening the minute that they become sexually active in any form.
Jill Johns, what does testing typically cost?
So at Legacy, we offer affordable options, and some tests are even free. We have some locations where you can come in for free HIV, syphilis, and hepatitis B testing. And our HIV test is only 1 minute. So within 1 minute, you can know your status on that one.
Jill, when a patient tests positive, what are the first steps you take to support them and ensure that they and their partners get the care they need?
We have a team of people at our clinic who are well-versed in getting people into care. So they will meet with a counselor, a peer navigator, and then that person will help walk them through the process of getting payment options figured out, seeing if they qualify for certain special programs, such as Ryan White, which can cover the full cost of the person's care and medication. And then we also work to get them to see a clinician the same day, if at all possible. At our Legacy Montrose Clinic, we also have a pharmacy on site. Someone can walk in for rapid testing, get a positive result, and be able to meet with a doctor, meet with a navigator, and walk out with medication that same day.
Dr. Vanek, there are some obvious differences when we look back decades, but over the years, how has healthcare surrounding HIV as well as other sexually transmitted diseases changed since you've spent your time in this world caring for patients?
It's changed dramatically. I would say it's a lot simpler. So now, instead of for HIV specifically, now instead of people taking handfuls of pills, patients can typically take 1 pill a day for HIV. There are even injection medications for HIV where patients typically can take an injection every 8 weeks. And then for prevention for HIV, there are oral medications that are taken daily. There are injection medications that are taken every 8 weeks. And there's also going to be in June, the FDA is meeting for approval on a medication that can be taken every 6 months, which I believe can dramatically change the whole space of HIV prevention, and that is particularly effective in women across the world. There was 0 transmission documented in that study. So we're really gaining traction in all of our prevention efforts. So these are really groundbreaking changes. So a long way we've made tremendous progress in that effort. So for STD prevention, we now typically, like the prior guest was explaining, we can give prevention for STDs. We can give doxycycline for prevention of very effective for chlamydia and syphilis. It's about 50% effective for preventing gonorrhea. While that's not 100%, it's still 50%, which is really great. And it's really effective for male body persons, and there is great studies going on in Japan showing that if we give it daily for women, it is also very effective.
Jill, we began the hour talking about Supreme Court oral arguments Monday in a case over an Affordable Care Act provision that requires health insurers to cover the costs of identified preventive care drugs. The challenge was sparked in particular over the HIV prevention drug PrEP. How much of an impact would a continued requirement for insurance to cover PrEP have on helping to prevent the spread of HIV?
Insurance being able to cover PrEP truly changes people's lives. It's something that will allow people to stay HIV negative and to continue to own their health. It's an amazing tool, and it possibly not being there anymore would have a dramatic impact on our patient population as well as people across the country who need PrEP.
Jill Johns is Director of Health Navigation. Dr. Natalie Vanek is Medical Director for Infectious Disease, both with Legacy Community Health. Jill, Dr. Vanek, thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And just ahead on this Earth Day, area historian Douglas Brinkley on the great environmental awakening of the 1960s and 70s. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
Keep running.
Support comes from Auti International School, where French and Spanish immersion programs empower students from pre-K 3 to 12th grade with the skills they need to make their mark on an ever-changing world. More at awty.org.
Support comes from HealthLink Advisors, preparing hospitals for cyber attacks and resulting downtime with clinical-led business continuity services designed to ensure continuous patient care and operations. More at healthlinkadvisors.com.
From UT Austin's McCombs School of Business, offering a weekend MBA in Houston. Classes held in person on alternating weekends. Campus visit April 25th to 26th. Registration available. TexasMBA.com. Make it.
Tonight on Houston Public Media, TV8, in a personal and unflinching film, renowned historian Sir Simon Schama confronts the history of the concentration camps. Watch The Holocaust 80 Years On, tonight at 8 on TV8.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. It's Earth Day, an annual event that's been raising awareness for environmental issues since 1970. That is the same year Congress passed the Clean Air Act and President Nixon established the federal EPA. Rice University historian and author Douglas Brinkley recalls how it all went down in his book, Silent Spring Revolution. The title refers to another book from 1962 by writer and conservationist Rachel Carson called simply Silent Spring. As Brinkley told our Michael Haggerty in 2022, Carson's book warned then of the harmful impact of pesticides like DDT.
And it had a seismic effect on our country because for the first time, a book was telling moms and dads that your children could be sick if they're playing in the backyard, that the grass has poison on it, that the air is being sprayed with contaminants, that we all are getting more likely to get cancer because of these reckless use of pesticides that were being sprayed from aerial planes on agriculture and the like. And so she really is the one who launched the modern environmental movement of what I call the long 60s, which really ends in 1973 when Richard Nixon on December 28th of that year signed the Endangered Species Act.
This book had a huge effect on people in general, but one of them was JFK. How did it affect him, and more importantly, the decisions and policy initiatives he made?
Well, of course, John F. Kennedy, as we all know, had a love affair with the Atlantic Ocean. He constantly wanted to go sailing. He had what I call blue mind, needing to be near water, needing to get the breezes off the ocean. His favorite places, his sacred spots were Hyannisport or Newport in Rhode Island, Palm Beach, Florida, always along the ocean. And so his mother, Rose Kennedy, was a giant fan of Henry David Thoreau. She grew up at Walden Pond. In fact, all the Kennedy kids of that era learned to swim in Walden Pond. Rose would drive them to Concord to go into the fabled waters of Thoreau. John F. Kennedy's mother went to Russia on a secret mission just to make sure Thoreau was being carried in Russian libraries. And so she was a naturalist at heart. And this rubbed off on John F. Kennedy. So not only did he adore Rachel Carson's books about the oceans, but she became a member of the New Frontiers. She was part of the famous Democratic Advisory Council and was weighing in and writing some of the Democratic Party plank in 1960. So when Kennedy gets elected, a lot of Rachel Carson's ideas had already fomented in the Democratic Party's notions of the new conservation. I write in the book this period from 45 to about 1963. Certainly, these were proto-environmentalists. Nobody called themselves an environmentalist. It was still conservation. Rachel Carson changes that, and by, say, 1968, everybody's calling themselves an environmentalist, which means, yes, we want to save national parks and wilderness and national seashores, but we also want to get the contaminants out of our air and water.
So what kinds of things came out of her work and, of course, its effect on JFK and that new environmentalist movement?
Well, you get this just cavalcade of legislation that starts getting passed. That's just remarkable. I mean, we get birth of the First, the Clean Air Act of 1963, and then there's a Clean Air Act of 1970 with Nixon signs. We have the Clean Water Act of 1972, Endangered Species 73, the National Environmental Policy Act, which gives us impact statements for anybody listening now. If you're in business, you've had to have if you're going to build something, what's the environmental impact? That comes out of all of this. The EPA, the Protection of Bald Eagles Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the creation of NOAA. Where does it end? None of this existed before Rachel Carson's book. And so I don't use the word in my titles of the book Silent Spring Revolution. I'm not using the word revolution in a reckless fashion. We really had three major environmental movements in 20th century America. One was with Theodore Roosevelt from 1901 to 1909. One was during the Dust Bowl with FDR from 1933 to 1945. And the third is John F. Kennedy to Nixon, 61 to 73. And then Watergate consumed Nixon, and the Arab oil embargo started making energy the big national concern. And suddenly the environmental movement was in retreat. But for the period I'm writing about, it was a really huge force in American life, to the point that the first Earth Day of 1970, the millions of Americans, it was covered on live television all over the country, demanding the stopping of the polluting of our planet. And, and musicians I write about, like Marvin Gaye with Mercy Me, The Ecology, or, Pete Seeger singing against ticky-tacky little suburban houses that are killing open spaces. Rock and roll bands, every single one really had an environmental anthem of one kind or another. Even Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind was seen by some as criticism of nuclear fallout, and that, out of the Nevada test. So, this was the 60s, and the long 60s, and we haven't had this fourth wave. Climate change is out there. People talk about it. It seems like it's about to become the number one issue, but here we are. Climate change is not the hot topic in the country. It's inflation, it's energy, and it's crime and abortion. And so once again, even though climate's in our discussion, it hasn't risen to this revolutionary moment when massive legislative and social change occurs, when the American people demand cleaner air and cleaner water, better land stewardship.
You'd think, I guess, that, if you use some of the most dire language to describe and talk about climate change, which we sometimes do, as a life or death scenario, as can life continue on this planet to exist, down the road? It comes down to that if you look at it, if you play it out in your mind. What would it take, and why isn't that creating a fourth wave or another revolution? What would it take to create another revolution on this scale of environmentalism?
Well, all of the pieces of the puzzle came together in the 1960s, meaning, for starters, the conservation was not a partisan issue. It was Democrats and Republicans. In fact, the most effective legislator of that period was a man named John Salyer of Pennsylvania, a congressman, Republican, who fought for all of this and worked across, the aisle with John Dingell, a Democrat from Michigan. You had people like Walt Disney prioritizing the saving of wildlife in his True Adventure films and the Walt Disney shows. TV was building on new research that how intelligent dolphins and porpoises were. You had TV shows like Flipper, or a show like Big Bend about a black bear. There was this new realization that predators were good for the environment, that you don't kill coyotes and wolves and fox, that they actually contributed to ecosystems. You had Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas, who was called the Green Justice, and he would go on protest hikes, just as Martin Luther King, would march from Montgomery to Selma. William O. Douglas, Supreme Court Justice, would march in some cases 186 miles to save the C&O Canal in Washington, Virginia, to save the Pacific Coast and Olympic Strip in Washington State, to stop dams from being built on the Buffalo River in Arkansas, or the rivers in Kentucky. And I could go on and on. Scientists were opening their mouths and publicly speaking up, not just somebody like Rachel Carson, but there was all sorts of scientists that were winning Pulitzer Prizes, Nobel Prizes, warning us about the degradation of Earth. It just all kind of came together. And 3 presidents in a row, Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, the environment got elevated. With Lyndon Johnson, due to his wife Lady Bird, beautification, no billboards, clean highways, wildflowers. She would go visit, our national parks like Big Bend in Texas. She went and rafted through Big Bend. She went and hiked in the redwood country. Lyndon Johnson created the Wilderness Act in 1964, putting 9.1 million acres of land without roads. They did Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, keeping strips of America pristine. New national parks like Canyonlands in Utah, North Cascades in Washington, Redwood in California, Cumberland Island in Georgia, Padre Island, Texas. Big fight. John F. Kennedy got it done, saving Padre Island National Seashore, and he did Cape Cod National Seashore and Point Reyes. The point is, it really was just galvanizing, and people were getting very disgusted by the Eisenhower Interstate Highway System that went and just bulldozed down scenic neighborhoods like Storyville in New Orleans or parts of old historic Queens. And so there was this idea, what are we doing? We are being too reckless. And as a backdrop to all this, you had the Vietnam War going on, which created a youth counterculture movement, and it turned into a green movement. And here we were in Vietnam dropping bombs that were, Agent Orange and defoilization. So on one hand, in America, we're having Earth Day, and meanwhile, we're dropping and destroying Vietnam. So it was just a very tumultuous time, and it was a moment where all of the pop culture, Capitol Hill, and the White House all kind of morphed with public scientists to create a movement.
What lessons from that movement do you think still apply today as we face our own set of environmental challenges?
I think this will sound like a cliche, but that all environmental politics are local. Fight for your local state park. Fight to clean your backyard bayou. Fight to have more open space. Just work on it and prioritize it in your city or town or village, and not get overwhelmed by the climate challenge. Because I teach at Rice University, and you talk to students there, and I mean, it's hard. Like, what can we do? I'm driving a car with gasoline. I can't afford an electric car. I have a huge carbon footprint. I'm flying. I mean, it's hard, and I think we're not having fun. If you're going to be saving places, it should be fun. If you want to go in and say, look, the bald eagle right now, which almost went extinct in the 60s and 70s, came back, and now lead bullets from hunters, the lead in it are there that are now getting into the bloodstream of eagles, and their populations are in decline. The manatee in Florida, charismatic mammal, having a hard time with motorboats chopping off their backs because the speed limits aren't lowered. So I think if everybody takes something and becomes a friend of a park, a friend of a species, it gets you going, you feel you can do something, and then it'll all eventually snowball into a larger movement. It's about just being engaged and picking something that matters. I ask people, what's their Walden Pond? I'd ask you, what's a natural place that you love, that in your life it could be a national park, it could be your grandmother's farm, it could be a city park, but what's a place in the natural world that has spoke to you? And just think like that, and then think, well, where in this city, in greater Houston, where do I want to protect or help? I mean, shouldn't we have a clean Galveston Bay? Shouldn't we be able to have oysters and shrimp that aren't contaminated? Do we have to treat our rivers as sewers? So these questions you have to ask, get a fighting spirit, but have fun. There's nothing more special than getting to save a special place if you love this country. And, even Nixon on the first Earth Day planted a tree. We can do it. Small gestures matter.
Rice University history professor Douglas Brinkley there. He is the author of Silent Spring Revolution, John F. Kennedy, Rachel Carson, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and the Great Environmental Awakening. Brinkley spoke with producer Michael Haggerty in 2022. Still to come, American folk rocker and Houston native David Ramirez. He's in concert at the Heights Theater tomorrow night. Stick around as Houston Matters continues.
Keep right and then turn right.
When you hear a story
Turn
on
right.
Houston Public Media, you know it's been carefully reviewed and put together by journalists who take the time to get it right.
Your support helps keep our reporting clear, balanced, and factual.
Because when you have all the facts, you can make better decisions for yourself, your family, and your future.
Protect the news that you rely on. Give now at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
We believe in your right to free information. Help protect trusted news and keeps us all informed by supporting Houston Public Media. Stand up for your right to information. Give today at HoustonPublicMedia.org or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Scan Health Plan, a not-for-profit Medicare Advantage plan that has been dedicated to the health and independence of their members since 1977. More information at scanhealthplan.com.
Singer-songwriter David Ramirez has recorded 6 full-length studio albums and 3 EPs. He's also collaborated with many, many other musicians over the years, but a bad breakup left him without the desire to write music. After a long break and a lot of introspection, the Houston native has a new album out. It's called All the Not-So-Gentle Reminders. It's a wide-ranging collection of tunes which celebrate the power of music to heal and to give hope. Ramirez performs at the Heights Theater Wednesday night. He tells Houston Matters producer Mincho Jacob how he rediscovered the joy in creating music and art.
My father still loves music, so we make regular trips to the music store to get cassette tapes or CDs and listen to them all the time in the car. But, we were mostly like playing baseball. That was pretty much my childhood, was baseball, until my senior year in high school. And I met some kids who in choir and theater. They introduced me to the arts and, fell in love with playing instruments because of these people I was around at that time.
I love a good theater kid, and I lettered in orchestra, so.
Yeah, I snuck in at the last minute, and I'm glad I did. My life would look a lot different had that not happened, for sure.
It's the build-up, it's the breakdown. I don't recognize this place anymore.
And was guitar the first instrument that you picked up?
My mother did put me in piano lessons when I was younger, but I never really practiced. But I still kind of knew what I was doing, but it never really clicked until I started playing guitar and writing songs, and then my love for piano really sprouted after I picked up guitar. But yeah.
And how did you get into being a songwriter? Because it's one thing to play an instrument, to play with folks, but actually composing, writing lyrics, you're very much a lyricist. Just listening to your songs, I feel like that's a big part of your sound.
Yeah, no doubt. It came pretty quickly. I wasn't any good at writing when I was 17 and picking up guitar, but the desire to write, the desire to share my feelings was pretty instant. For me, an instrument was a way for me to get my thoughts, my feelings, and express myself. It wasn't really like a, hey gang, here's Wonderwall, and try to get laid at a party. I really just wanted to write about my life and the things that I felt. So it was all terrible back then. But the desire to do so came pretty naturally. Once I was given that outlet of an instrument, I kind of jumped in head first.
Back when it was all simple, back when I wasn't afraid, back when time was my best friend, and I would laugh at the grave. My daddy gave me a Walkman, my daddy gave me a 界の空見上げながら何度も諦めかけたけど信じてた眩しい朝を Today, tomorrow 一人じゃないさ誓い合った心は一つ Today, tomorrow きっと作ろうきらめく明日はいつも僕らの遥かなこの空のどこかに傷つく君がいるのならばいつでもすぐに飛んでゆくよ遠くてもきっと行くから Today, tomorrow 苦しい時は 週きらめく地球救うのは君だパワー集めろ炎に変えろスーパー人類ファイヤーガーズ祈り込めて重ねるんだサーキン色のマスターブレスを正義のために立ち上がれヒーロー君は眩しいスーパートランスフォーマー僕らの信頼君は超高の戦士飛び出せ信頼奴らが迫る大空へもう許さないどこまでも進めパワーの限り狙い定めてスーパー人類ファイヤーガーズその名は信頼君は究極の戦士戦え信頼サイバートロンの救世主きらめく地球救うのは君だパワー集めろ炎に変えろスーパー人類ファイヤーガーズ
I'll find a new route.
デストロン のでせ全てをファイファイファイ負け犬などいらない人の心が炎ならデストロンの血は氷何億光年離れても追い詰める狙った敵はデストロンデストロン最後に笑うデストロン涙を流すならデストロンは血を流す宇宙の地図を塗りつぶせ俺たちの野心の色にデストロンデストロンデストロン最後に笑うデストロン
ladies and gentlemen, the time is it is about lunchtime, and as we reach New in about 175 miles to Berryville, Missouri, and it looks like that will conclude our routes for this Earth Day. So I need to thank you all for trucking with me, and I hope to see you club members around 8:45 or so tomorrow. It's early, so as we go to the train club in Penny Farms, and so be in club by 8:45, and because the bad news is Avery Brown is under recovery for his left foot, so you don't have to worry about him. So just us all day tomorrow.